Hello and welcome back to the show. Today we are reviewing Everton Spurs, and for the second consecutive year, Everton respond late and get a point and salvage something out of nowhere, really, because it didn't really look like we had a sniff at all. So credit to this team yet again for showing resilience. I think the real phrase to come out of this game is keep the faith, because nothing is impossible with this team, and I say that both positively and negatively because things always seem to turn the wrong way for this team. But today we were actually on the receiving end of some good news. You know, the VAR calls went our way, which, to be honest, I thought with that review after Branthwaite scored, I thought it was going to get overturned. I thought they were going to find a way, but luckily we were able to get something out of it. But look, we're just going to dive into the game because this was a pretty hectic one. I think this was a great performance in terms of deterring Spurs from doing what they love to do. It was not a Spursy type performance today. Usually with them, it's very end-to-end, very crisp passing. They're really showing off that talent that they have got, and they've got a lot of it. You know, we saw, even though they had very limited opportunity today, they scored 2 goals. So they've really got a lot of that, and they've channeled a lot of that this season and gotten quite a few points out of it. But I think we did a great job today in terms of interrupting, in terms of keeping them restless, the amount of times they were on the ground, because sometimes they were flopping, sometimes they were getting clipped. There was no easy room for them to operate outside of the 2 goals, which is actually very surprising because those 2 goals are not Dyche-led team goals. A Dyche team never concedes goals that easily. Like, the first goal, Mykolenko had to deal with his man on the back post, so he didn't actually peel off his man to potentially try to cut off the pass. And thus, Branthwaite was playing off his man as well. So it was just an easy pass. It was almost the FIFA goal. It looked like the team was operated by AI, as in like the CPU are perfectly capable on FIFA of doing such abominably bad defense. It was just way too easy. And I almost was in a shock, because I was like, well, we haven't conceded goals at such a rate for ages. Really haven't conceded any goals at all. And to concede a goal like that early on in the game, that really did a lot for the atmosphere and the energy, even though it has been dead for weeks on end. You know, today, after the first goal was scored, it really felt dead inside the stadium. And I'm halfway across the world, and I could get a gauge on that. Like, when we scored that first goal, I think people were shocked that it went in, because, it's an Everton thing to do to miss from point-blank range. And also, like, no one seemed really invested in the goal. The players didn't. They weren't really celebrating. It wasn't one of those goals where you see the fans going completely nuts. Like, it was a very subdued sort of reaction. And that just goes to show how goals early on in games at Goodison can really alter the psychology of the game and really change the complexity of how we perform for the rest of the 90 minutes. And it's a long stretch of time. I think when you look at the goals that we scored, it really embodied the way we wanted to play. Both of them from set pieces, both of them slow, both of them, very structured. We can't score in open play, even if it's one of the most jammiest of goals. I think we got the game on our terms because Spurs really couldn't get it past their defensive third. We had a lot of guys pressing. The centre halves were pressing. Like, you had Branthwaite on Richarlison's back shoulder. You had Gana Gueye and James Garner really working well between them to keep things in that attacking third for us, where we really could go to work. And there were quite a few opportunities. Spurs were turning it over in places where usually they're able to navigate through. We've seen this in past games as well with really good opposition. The system that Dyche has employed really holds up in terms of that pressing. I think this team is really good at pressing. They've shown it for games on end, and I think today that was an embodiment of the fitness this team has got. We didn't have a down period in the match where we sort of reeled, like we sort of stood back. Every single minute of the game, it felt like we were emphasizing pressurizing the Spurs players, and they were faltering. And ultimately, I think it was that press and that relentless nature that we were playing with that really helped us to get that final goal. And, you know, we were pressing for the final 10 or so minutes, and you could sense that there was going to be a couple of opportunities. We saw it with the Chermiti shot that, you know, Dobbin was able to feed him with. That was a great cross-in, by the way. I think those substitutions were good subs, very good, high-energy, aggressive sort of moves that indicated we needed to chase the game. Of course we did. We were trailing 2-1. But I think with Deitch going all in and making 4 changes, first trying a 2-man up top approach, well, he did that for the rest of the game, and then he brought on a younger Dobbin, who was excellent in the few minutes he played. I think those sort of players really fit the grafting sort of mindset we had to go with in the final 10 minutes. We had to give absolutely everything. And then when you've got players like Beto and Dobbin really closing down on these Spurs players and putting him under boatloads of pressure, I think those subs were really, really good subs. Could he have made them a little bit earlier? I think so. I think players like Dwight McNeil were really tiring, and he has not been his normal self in recent games. I do think we know how impactful he is at his best, but he has really been struggling a little bit to grasp those moments. Maybe he's overdue for a breather, but I don't think we have the depth to actually be able to afford such a thing. So, yeah, I think those subs were excellent subs. DCL just can't get things to go his way, can he? Like, he had not scored in 16 games. He has a point-blank header from about 2 feet away, 2 yards away, right in front of the goal, basically unguarded. And of course, he finds a way to knock it into one of his own. So the goal doesn't count for DCL, but I do think he had a good game today again in terms of all the hold-up and the flick-ons and that sort of thing. I think sometimes he tried to overdo it, but for the most part, I think he was pretty good at what he did. That being said, he had a really tall order in terms of having to deal with Van de Ven and Romero. Obviously, 2 different sort of centre-backs. One's more physically minded, the other is very pacey. And Van de Ven was a man possessed today. You know, in the second half when we were trying to play a little bit of hoofball and get in behind their high line, mate, Van de Ven, his closing speed was unbelievable. And it makes it more impressive we scored 2 goals from set pieces, because I think we exploited that sort of part of the game where Van de Ven is probably not as aerially gifted as he is at ground level. So I think the fact that we emphasized that today, we had a lot of corners, and all those corners were really hitting dangerous spots. I felt like as the sample grew in terms of the more corners we had, every single corner that mounted, my hope grew that we were going to get something out of it. And ultimately, 2 goals added to the tally in terms of set pieces. And I think we have 10 or so goals on the season from that source. So I think we really did well to recognize a weakness there with Vicario and Van de Ven and those sort of players that probably would prefer to be playing the cuter side of the game in terms of playing that crisp passing. That's a Postecoglou game style. I think we did a good job of really just trying to slow it up as much as possible and really frustrate them. I haven't done my player of the match. My player of the match is Idrissa Gana Gueye. It just has to be. I think he was at AFCON and you would have given him a pass for being a little bit lethargic and coming off the bench. No, he plays a full 90 minutes and was instrumental. His ball winning ability today was just superb, even though everything else after that leaves a lot to be desired. You know, in a game where we needed territory, and territory was valuable, especially when, you know, Spurs can be really dangerous in their own attacking third. We needed to keep it away from there as much as possible, and Gana Gueye was superb, really immense at doing all those things that I've talked about, the congestion, keeping it in our attacking third. He was so instrumental to all of that and really orchestrated that. Jordan Pickford was also good. His distribution was a little bit off, but I think those saves that he made sort of made up for it. Ben Godfrey was good again, playing right back temporarily in dire need. Mikolenko was strong, even though the back four started very, very slowly. I think we did a good job in responding to that. And I think Jack Harrison also wasn't too bad. Ashley Young, I was pretty impressed with. Even though the end product wasn't there, I do like how he was, especially earlier in the game, where we were utilizing that right side a little bit more often. I did like how we were using him, and he was helping bring the ball forward. And I mean, he was pretty responsible in possession when he wasn't crossing the ball. He was a part of a lot of our attacking positive moves in that first half, where more of the shots were generated. So I think he had a good game as well. Worth an honourable mention, at least. Look, I think the result does us justice. I don't think we were perfect. I do feel as if, like I've said this multiple times, you play good opposition and you have moments of lapse, they will punish you. And with the 2 goals that we conceded, we just allowed a little bit too much space. They are too good to not capitalize on that very small window of opportunity that they did have. Even if there is a glimmer of daylight, they will find a way. And that's going to be transferred over to the next game as well. That's very thematic for the next couple of games we're going to play. Very difficult fixtures. We've got Man City away from home, which funnily enough actually netted us a point last season. So that's, of course, going to be a very, very tough ask. But as we saw, and as we've talked about today, the pressing works against any team as long as you bring the heat, you've got the mindset, you actually wake up on the right side of bed. For the first 10 minutes of the game today, I didn't think we were going to be witnessing a very good 90, a very good performance by this team, but they responded, they showed resilience against a good side, and I think, as I continue to say, if we carry the right themes all the way through the season, we'll be just fine. We'll be just fine. And as long as we bring the heart, we bring the resilience in those moments where we're challenged, everything will fall into place. I think that's just the message, that this team doesn't quit. We've got to keep the faith. We've got to stick by them. And as I've said, with this team, good or bad, anything is in fact possible. So that'll do it. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you are new. We will be back for the Manchester City review at the conclusion of that game. Have a great day. Stay safe. We'll chat to you soon. Bye for now.